Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome to the breakdown with Birkenhoff, and this is the first live stream. So I want to make sure that it is going to all the correct platforms as it should. And this is as I explained on my introduction video. This is a new software that I am using because the OBS decided, you know what, I'm not going to work anymore. So that was definitely a blast. So I'm just going to see here and make sure that it looks like we are live. And it looks like we are. So that is good. All right. Let me just check this out. Okay. Well, we're not live on one of them, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter too much. So basically what I'm not going to probably stay on for super long on this one, but I have an idea of one of my longer form videos or potentially on a podcast talking about the Libertarian candidate. So I decided I could kind of include that for this one just a little bit. So I was like, well, what can I do, with that? So I decided that we were going to play Spin the Wheel. So here we have all the seven candidates that were in the last debate in Georgia. Now, one of them here isn't really a candidate; it was more of a joke, essentially. But anyway, if we'll just so we're going to spin it, and we're going to kind of look at that person's website, and then we're going to look a little bit at the video from the debate, and we'll just see and make sure that everything works, and go on from there. Okay, so let's start. All right. Oops. Well, to me, it landed on Mike. It said Toad, but we're gonna just pretend that it didn't land on him. So we're gonna go to Mike. So I thought we'll start first with the website. So if we go to his website, we're just gonna have a quick look, quick glance, quick glander, and then we'll go from there. So as I was mentioning, there's really like six main candidates so far, at least. And this is one. And it's kind of interesting that we ended up on Mark first because he's been one I've been generally following for a little bit because his candidate candidacy was kind of one of the more practical ones, you could say. And I also listened to this guy called Larry Lawton, and he was a jewel thief guy. But long story short, he had him on earlier, and he lives in Florida. And I don't know if he was entirely impressed with him or not. But yes, it's Mike Tarmat. Yeah, yeah. And hey, so yeah, so let's just give it a quick look. Let's go to the about section first. But long story short, he's one of the more serious candidates, I guess you could call it. And we're just gonna have a quick read. So Mike campaigned in the 2021-22 Libertarian Party in January special congressional election in Florida's District 20. He served as a police officer in Broward County from 2010 through 2021 as a registered libertarian. Mike's prior career in finance and economics included work with banks. Oh, hang on a second. Let me show you what we're looking at here. Let's go. Let me show you what we're looking at. I gotta find the right tab here. Here it is. All right. He traveled in Texas quite a bit. Yeah, he's like I said. I think he's one of the more serious candidates. He's been putting a lot of money into his campaign and a lot of traveling, and he's coming from more of the left side of the Libertarian Party compared to more of the right side of the Libertarian Party, which I think is going to have quite a lot of pull for for his candidacy. I don't know if he's necessarily going to win, but I do think that that helps him out. So we were from right here. From 1992 to 2002, Mike was an advocate in Washington for free markets and the financial service industry. In 2002, he started a professional education business for bank executives, which he successfully ran until 2009, including conferences, webcasting, and strategic counseling. Mike has traveled through 35 countries, taught economics at 3 universities, and substituted at thousands of Broward public schools. He has one wife, 2 kids, and 2 stepdaughters, 2 dogs, and a truck. A BS in aeronautical engineering and a BMA from Winsler something Institute, which is going to 10. He did, we have a comment here. So he did a brunch in Houston. Then he had lunch in College Station and then went back to Houston for a happy hour event. I was like, whoa. Yeah, like getting the Texas vote is, probably a smart idea, so to speak. But yeah, that's a lot. College Station from Houston, that's 3 hours, maybe 2.5 if you're a good driver. But yeah, that's doing that back and forth is a bit crazy. I know that when I was in Nacogdoches, this hadn't been presidency. It wasn't in there then. Or was it the president? No, I don't think I was there long enough for it to be a president. But we had somebody reach out that was wanting to do an event there, and then he was going to go to College Station, and then I remember what it was now. It was for the governor in Texas, so it wasn't the president before the governor. Man, what was his name? Mark Tippett, Mark Tippett. I think that's what his name was. But we were trying to get him to come to Nacogdoches, and then he was going to go to College Station, and I think he was going to go to San Antonio. And I was like, wow, I mean, like, that's putting a lot of work, but it didn't end up working out. I did think he went to College Station, but I believe he got kicked out of like what he was going to do. Like he was going to have a speech, not necessarily at their theater, I don't think, but yeah, he got kicked out of there. But it was I talked to him and his buddy who was kind of running his campaign. I don't remember his name either, but I can see his face, and it just never worked out. Okay, let's see. Do we want to watch this or do we want to go to the debate? Let's go to the platform first. Let's look at the platform first. Okay, so he's got a couple of tabs here. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 tabs. I know in the debate because I have watched it. It was he was talking a little bit about artificial intelligence. Like he has some sort of site that runs off of artificial intelligence. And I don't really know exactly what he's talking about there, like what the intention of that is. But so we'll have to see when we get there. But let's start from the top. And Wes Benedict, yes, that's his name. Yes, yeah. I think I ended up giving him money when Wes was there in Texas. For whenever I was at a select, I think it was just a select meeting. Like there wasn't anything else going on, but I remember sitting next to him, and that's when I had that discussion. All right, so it says time for a gold New Deal. We, the philosophical descendants of those libertarians who were the founders of our nation, which was formed for the sole purpose of protecting the rights of individuals, recognize that our political structure has drifted away from this singular legitimacy. We therefore recommit to the decentralization of authority inherent in our Constitution and limit the power of government, as required by the Bill of Rights. Tarmat has LISA and IA thing. All right, yeah, that's what I remember him mentioning that, because like I followed his campaign a little bit. I haven't really followed it too much. No, none of the candidates really haven't followed too much, but I just think from my brief impression of watching the Georgia debate, and I think it was the South Carolina debate, he strikes me as the most reasonable candidate on the stage. Him and one other guy I kind of didn't think were too bad. So let's see what he has to say in this video. We'll have to see if it will play the audio. It should, but let's test it out. Okay. So hopefully that video did play. That's one thing I'm checking. I know with this you can make sure it pops up that it will play audio through your through your web page. But if you do something else, it won't. See, yeah, it says so. No, it didn't. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was you kind of have to play around with it a little bit because I was doing some test runs. So let's see real quick. So if we go here, we're gonna stop the screen share. All right, go back. We're gonna press this. Here we go. Yeah, so this one should play audio. This section here. So let's just do a quick test again. We don't necessarily have to play. Oops. Hang on a second. This could be why it's. Yeah, ha. Here we go. This is what I needed to do. Now we should be good. Now the audio should play. So when I switch to this tab, I had it set to the sharing of the other tab. So since I clicked a new link, so to speak, it wasn't sharing the audio through there, but now it will. Now it's going to share. So
as libertarians, we are the philosophical descendants of those who founded this nation. As libertarians, we recognize that our government has drifted away from the sole legitimate purpose of preserving and protecting the individual liberties of our citizens. As libertarians, we therefore recommit to the decentralization of authority inherent in the Constitution, to the limitations on government powers as required by the Bill of Rights, and to a new and fundamentally different relationship between us and the government we will tolerate, more consistent with the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, a Gold New Deal.
okay. So yeah, that should have played through there. And it looks like he has a bunch of people who endorse this idea and maybe share their insight about the Golden No Deal too. So you see here, I'm trying to see if I recognize anybody. There's some people from financial institutes, a lot of Mises Caucus, it looks like, and there's former LP chairs from probably different counties, or not counties, different states. So that's one of his platforms. But let's go ahead and just click a different one here. Okay. Ooh, well, that's the platform. Well, this works too. I guess that was on the introduction where it was the. Let me go back here. Introduction. Okay. Yeah, let's just go back to platform. Let's start there. Okay. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different main platform views. One is empower decentralization of authority, preserve individual autonomy, eliminate the IRS, limit federal expenditure in mandatory investment in the Federal Reserve, allow phase out of public education, reform police accountability in these military individualism, and impose term limits. We have comment. He was a nice guy, not super inspirational, but don't hate him. Yeah, that's an impression I've got from looking around, especially like the comment sections of the recent debate in Georgia, and also what that Larry Lawton guy had to say. And that's why when if I do choose to do this, my idea would be picking each one of these candidates and doing like a in-depth video over each candidate that gives like their viewpoints, my thoughts, and then like some other people's viewpoints about them, and kind of doing something like that. And this is just more of a research and test to make sure that the live stream is working. But long story short, that was kind of his point when he had him, because he actually had brought him to his house because he lives in Florida and that's where Mike is from. And this is months and months ago. So before he's probably really picked up his campaign. But he was like, he liked kind of his viewpoints, but he kind of have how you just said, he wasn't really inspirational. He's very monotone almost with his voice. And he's definitely not like a Trump or something that's gonna go outright and bully you or be super charismatic and maybe doesn't really have the policy. I think he has the policy, but not the charisma. And you kind of need both. And also a lot of people don't like him for simply have being a cop. It is kind of a big mark against his views. Are people trusting ultimately him as a candidate? It's kind of a big no no. And then you say he presents like a cop, and he's like, maybe it's because I've just recently graduated in college, but he presents a lot like my one of my professors did. He's just very matter of fact, not much, tone in his voice. It was a her in that case for my professor, but it was the same sort of thing. Like you can tell they're very knowledgeable, but it's kind of boring, and that doesn't necessarily mean good results. So those are his main points. Ultimately, none of the points are necessarily bad. I don't know if I necessarily want to read all these paragraphs here. Like the idea of eliminating the IRS, like I'm pretty sure every candidate wants to do that. It's kind of a major factor of that. Uh, where was it? Allow phase out of public education is kind of interesting. He says here, public funding of primary and secondary education shall be attached to each child in full measure per pupil equal to the funding of public schools. Public schools will be allowed to phase out under competitive pressures. Public funding of higher education, including student loans, shall be eliminated. So that's his thought there. And that kind of brings me to a random point. I don't know if yes, vouchers. Yeah, that was um I don't know if you necessarily been following this too much. This is more of a Texas local thing, but Abbott is very much against these vouchers that are being talked about within each representative, and I think they had a vote on it recent, if I'm not mistaken. It's something I've actually want to research here and get more information. But long story short, he got into a direct conflict with I think his name is Travis Clardy or something, Travis something, who's the Nacogdoches rep, and he didn't get Abbott's endorsement for his campaign because of the voucher problem. And he was basically like, no, I'm not going to support what Abbott's wanting to do. I want to give teachers, a bigger pay, and I want to give parents options and blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of a local, more recent thing that I saw pop up about like 3, 4, 5 days ago within the local news, and that's something I was going to look more into. But yeah, that sounded much like the vouchers. All right, let's see. Uh, we'll go to one more thing because this got mentioned in the debate about his candidate comparison, and one person didn't particularly like how he had this on his website. So it has him versus the main candidates. And at first, when I heard it, I was like, candidate comparison. Is he comparing himself to all the others on the stage as a libertarian? And that's kind of where I was thinking of at first. But then obviously it's not. It's the main comparison of the two. So White House experience, he has, yes, he worked as a staff member, I want to say, not necessarily as like the main staff, but anyway. Economics, he's from Austrian school. Trade, he wants free trade. Obviously, spending, he wants uh, budget control. Money, he wants a plan to end the Fed and replace it with rules. Energy policy, he wants free markets. Not surprising. Entitlement reform, he wants requiring young people to enroll in Social Security is evil. Healthcare problems are socialism that fosters higher price and worse outcomes. Nothing, no surprise there. Criminal justice, he was the police officer, and he wants to bring some reforms. Free market for well, let me make sure. Let's read with because police reform. Let's see what he says there. We'll read it word for word. Bring market forces to bear on individuals by ending qualified immunity and requiring liability insurance, creating competition among agencies to include private sector contractors. So, not necessarily bringing it to the total free market there, but ending the qualified immunity. Not necessarily a super controversial topic, I would say. I think a lot of people are going to be for that than against that from probably both sides of the aisle at this point. So yeah, there's just kind of a general comparison he has on this website. All right. I just want I'm curious about this. So let's see this. We're gonna click this just to see what this is. So it has an essay. So it looks like it's just, his whole idea is just on a little bit more detail, probably. So I'm not gonna read that. Not in the mood to do that. Okay. So yeah, this was here when we did this. I'm just gonna click this, and then we're gonna go the um, to the debate footage from the most recent one with Georgia, and this is the artificial intelligence. Is the one I clicked here. Okay, let's see. Artificial intelligence technology is launching a boom to economic productivity. These production gains will accelerate income growth worldwide, including wage increases over the entire range of wage weights and throughout the developed and developing world. Some of this will necessarily involve job churn as with the introduction of new technologies in the past, but as in prior revolutions, AI will not lead to lower rates of employment. That's a mouthful there. You need to run that through Chat GPT or Grammarly and make it a little bit more summarized. What's it called with Grammarly? Make it more simplistic, is I think what they use. Anyway, artificial intelligence is a powerful tool that can be used for good or evil. Lisa and countless other trained bots are examples of the former. However, there are multiple paths to the latter, including AI in the wrong hands that they have becoming self aware, self interested, and self motivated. See, Lisa, I'm unaware of. I'm not sure what that is. It's something AI is not particularly a topic that interests me that much, but it is kind of interesting to hear people talk about it because some people are like totally for it and some people are like totally against it, like the Terminator is going to happen or something. Anyway, from a public policy perspective, one can easily imagine a government effectively weaponizing AI against its own population. It's also easy to imagine politicians leveraging the fear of the unknown to regulate the use of the AI in ways that stifle its potential for good. As Lisa says, the best way to ensure that technology is used for good is to have a government that respects individual liberty and freedom. We have a couple comments here. It says, interesting to see him use a MC guy and a CLC guy to write an article on. I know because his campaign sent me something on my Slack email. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I think he's probably trying to get grab from both aisles a little, or both sections a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be the candidate that's going to end up winning by any means. But it's definitely more of a serious campaign compared to some others out there. All right. Oh, that's me. We gotta go over here, I think. Yep. All right. I gotta come back over here to to share this tab. I'm going to make sure that we can hear the audio. So I'm just going to come back over here and reshare it just to make sure. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this was the most recent debate in Georgia for that the Libertarian Party of Georgia hosted, and it has brought up a bunch of controversy, you can say, because it got the most heated out of all of the debates so far. And one of the major reasons for that was one of the moderators who was chosen to be the one to ask the questions, obviously, because that's what the moderators do in the debates. What he, well, his name is Clint Russell, and he's very much a Mises Caucus person within the Libertarian Party, somebody that's more on the right side of the Libertarian Party than definitely not in the middle, and definitely not on the left side of the party. And he's also just recently announced that he's running to be vice president. And the Libertarian Party is slightly different because the Libertarian Party itself, you run as a vice president and you run as president. So you don't pick who your vice president is going to end up being. It's just that's what it, so you could have somebody that is extremely one direction and then somebody that's extremely the other direction as the VP if they get voted that way. Now, more than likely, knowing human nature and how humans tend to go about votes, this would not happen because you're probably going to have two candidates that are somewhat similar. But you could have somebody that's totally the opposite. So it is kind of interesting how that works. So, outspoken individual Clint, yes, that's a good way of putting it. And he also has a podcast. Well, he has a YouTube channel called Clint Russell, but also he has a podcast. Unless he changed the name of it as well. That was man, what was the name of his podcast? Locked in Liberty or something like that. And he had a huge rise with his podcast during COVID because let's just say he was very outspoken about the origins and and just COVID in general and the big housing stuff. And so he became really popular from that. And that is a good point. Joe and Spike were very counter opposites. So in some ways, you could very much end up with like say a Russell and a and Jacob Hornberg or somebody that are obviously against each other in some ways that could end up on the same ticket. So I'm gonna go and get my notebook over there. I don't know how much time I'm necessarily gonna spend doing this. We're definitely not going to be watching a whole 2 hours and 40 minutes. But I'll kind of explain what I'm thinking here soon. So let me go get my notebook over here if I can back up a chair. So basically, all I'm going to be doing here is looking for any of the parts that Mike is speaking. And I'm going to write kind of what the topic was and then when it started and ended. and such like that. And then if I think it's something that I'm interested in doing, I may post a video of a recap with the debate. But really, I'm just getting the clips of things they recently have said. So we're gonna look for all the clips of Mike, and we will go from there. And as you say, please God, no, and just the highlights. Yeah, I'm just literally just finished watching the whole thing. I had to watch it in sections because it can, in one sitting, it can be very frustrating, so to speak. So we're just gonna, I'm gonna start this, and we're gonna kind of skip along here. Yeah, we definitely want clips only. Oops. All right, that's Jacob. That's Chase. There he is. He says, I did South Carolina and had to write time marks for each candidate. Oh, you did? Oh my goodness. That sounds that sounds like hell. That's because that's essentially what I'm thinking of doing now with if I do choose to do the spin the wheel idea. This is obviously just kind of a random thing. It would be a lot more formatted and probably not as a live stream, just be more probably a longer video. But essentially, I would need to have all the timestamps of this debate. And if you do scroll down into the comments a little bit, if we'll load up, you have people with some timestamps already noted of like key moments, which is kind of cool. But yeah, perks of being on comms, instant eye roll. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know what to tell you there. Besides that, maybe not picking that one next for the role next time. It should be Mike's turn soon.
Mr. Tmont, hey, Brad, right? Yeah. Used to be a Republican or a Democrat?
Oh, real quick, just before we go too far, basically they're just this moderator dude is an independent voter, but I don't, from the sound of it, he's not libertarian. Like maybe he tends to vote libertarian, but he's more of a independent voter compared to a strict voter of the party. Not that it particularly matters, but he's saying he's definitely not Republican and definitely not Democrat. And he's asking the candidates their response about what you would tell him if you just randomly met him at the bar and you got to talking about politics. Like, how would you try to convince him to vote for you as the libertarian candidate? So that's kind of the question here.
I was the only thing I've ever voted for in presidential elections is libertarians.
You voted for libertarians?
A long time ago. I haven't in years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A lot of my family are Democrats, a lot of my family are Republicans. I used to be a Republican myself. And I don't know what led you to be a libertarian. But one of the things that led me to be a libertarian was realizing that for all of the reasons that my family had joined the Democratic Party, that party has gone in a really weird direction. A lot of folks, my mom and my sister in particular, joined that party thinking it would be a party of social liberalism, somebody that would stand up for your personal liberties. And for all of the aspirations, that party and my family have gone in two different directions. And honestly, as a young Republican myself, 100,000 years ago, having grown up as a banker and fiscal conservative, that party and I went in two different directions a long time ago. You know, it was in the 90s when I realized that it was a lie to say the Republican Party was fiscally conservative. And so I suspect that the reason that you became a libertarian was a lot of the reason I became a libertarian, which is that the other parties failed to reflect my values. And for that reason, I really felt like when I voted for another party, I was being untrue to myself. I was being untrue to my own values. And if you still have that libertarian leaning, as I believe most Americans do, by the way, I would suggest that you join us in continuing to represent those values. It's not so much your values have changed, but the frustration builds, right? But we're on the march, and I want to represent your values with you.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, and then they go on to Josh Smith, and we're like I said, we're only looking for the parts where Mike is speaking, but I don't know if you can really see it too well. But the small picture underneath the moderator guy is Toad, and he's part of the Tower Gang, which Clint, one of the moderators, has been on before. But he was the guy that's basically the joke candidate for this particular debate. And yeah, I just felt like mentioning that. Not that I particularly liked that part, but yeah, didn't he take his shoes off? Because I heard from because this guy here, Josh Smith, has a podcast called Break the Cycle, unless he's decided to change his name. But I saw a clip of that podcast where he was talking with Toad, and Toad was basically like, "Yeah, I had to take my shoes off because I thought we were gonna have to stand the whole time," and I was like, okay." So yeah, and I'm sorry that you had to see his feet there. Let's see. I may not necessarily remember this question here, but we're only looking for timestamps, so.
But we're running to govern a nation. That's what we're running to do. And the people of that nation are going to.
So this is about the border of some sort. I forget what that exact question was at this point, but this question is generally about the border and their policy about it. So let's see what the timestamp of this one.
That's part of the goal. It protect the rights of your citizens, right? If a government should exist at all, it's for those protections. So, thanks.
Did you just say Texas should get rid of 6 million people, Josh?
That sounds a little high.
Mr. Tomas.
Thanks. You can be a nationalist or you can be a libertarian. You're gonna have to pick one or the other. A couple things need to be said at the top. One is that immigration is good for the United States. It is one of those things that has differentiated us from other democracies around the world and has done so for a couple of hundred years. It's good for us economically. It's good for us fiscally. It's good for us culturally. And it's good for us in terms of developing what we all now consider an American spirit. We need a more pro-immigration policy and a more pro-immigrant policy. And that means a couple of different things. It's a false dichotomy to say we need to either shut down the border or we need to let everybody in. That's not the way that this works. We have a crisis at the border. I've seen it with my own eyes. I spent days down there at the Arizona border, and I can tell you, none of us, no one in this room should be proud of our federal policy toward immigration. However you feel about it, it sucks. The big problem down there is a humanitarian crisis in terms of human trafficking. Hundreds of thousands of people coming across every month and being sold into indentured servitude. No one should be putting up with that. And that comes from creating a black market, which is to say, making it illegal, but refusing to shut it down. What we need to do is come up with faster ways to get people through legally, and at the same time, get control over this idea of who is trying to come through illegally. Letting people come through illegal is bad for them. It is bad for them. Much worse for them than it is for the rest of us. We need to get control over it. And answer your specific question, yes, Texas absolutely has the right to take matters into their own hands.
Okay.
Yes, the 10th Amendment does matter.
So that's what the question was. I remember that now. So Clint's first question was about if Texas has the right to succeed. And so a lot of the candidates were talking about that 10th Amendment. But that was ultimately what the question was. And then it more turned into immigration. And we're just going to say 28 here. And don't necessarily not agree or totally agree with kind of what Mike is saying here. Not that I have too much insight necessarily to provide, and not about really what this stream or this video is about with the border, but obviously what is going on now is not really a good thing to continue. And the idea that Trump has to fix it is not going to fix it. The idea that Biden has now, if he gets reelected, is not going to fix it either. And occasionally, one of my guilty pleasures is watching conservative radio on is it 103 point something station where you'll have like Sebastian Gorka, you have that super old guy from Fox. There's lots of old guys, but you have him. You have the former police officer dude, Mike Tanum or something like that. But Sebastian Gorka's the main guy because that's like right when I get out of my job and get into my truck and drive home. I'll sometimes flip it on, and he's usually the host at that time. And he was talking on and on and on and on about the border, and basically the idea that since it's totally open right now, it's going to be easy for somebody, some terrorist of some sort, to squeeze on past. And essentially, that a terrorist attack is not likely going to happen. It's like very likely going to happen. And he was going on and on and on about it, and all the confirmed cases of ISIS on not Kakea, but terrorist groups getting through. Al Qaeda, that's the word I was thinking of. And I was like, I don't know. Obviously, the border is just a complex situation, but in his oh dear lord, because homegrown terrorism isn't a thing, right? Like, yeah, for sure. But it's just it's funny to me listening to that. Yeah, the guilty pleasure. Let's see if we can't
And
find this next
goes
one.
to trust. This is what I deconstruct propaganda, and I love your website. I think you got a lot of great information.
Okay, this was what I was talking about earlier. He calls out his website with comparison, and I forget exactly how this question is worded, so we'll listen to the rest of his question and how he answers it. But this was his website comparison thing, and as I was kind of explaining earlier, at first I thought this was a comparison amongst him and the other libertarian candidates, which in a way would be kind of beneficial to do, but you probably wouldn't get very good eyes within your libertarian voters for doing something like that because yeah, let's just say that wouldn't go over too well, I don't think.
On there, but when you have a candidate comparison, you have Trump, the big lie, on the bottom of it, and that to me is going to lose a lot of potential voters because that is a mainstream propaganda technique designed to associate Trump with Hitler. Defend.
No, it's not.
It is absolutely.
No, it's not. It's not.
You're incorrect.
Okay, I think you're incorrect.
All right. Well, defend that position. Defend that position.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Defend that position. Defend saying it's the big lie. What is your reasoning on that?
The big lie is a moniker by mainstream media to characterize Trump's characterization of the 2022 election as having been fraudulent.
Right, because it's designed to associate Trump with Hitler based on a negative they can't prove. That the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, said that it was the most secure election in American history, and that's basically the evidence you have. And so they call it the big lie, so people will have an open conversation about it, which leads to people getting their YouTube channels demonetized and kicked off. They get kicked off the platform for merely asking questions about legitimate issues, not even claiming there's widespread fraud, because there were counties in Georgia where there were 88 votes in Coffee County, I believe it was, that went to Biden, flipped to Trump, and then the judge cut it off and stopped letting them investigate it anymore because they didn't want anything to do with it. So did you know that?
Yes.
Okay, so explain the big lie. Is this something that you believe this is a big lie? Like,
Oh, dog whistles galore. Yeah, pretty much. Like this, I'm not really sure about either of these moderators, not monitors. Obviously, I've already described earlier about Clint, and I don't remember what this dude's name is. Not that it really matters much. But this sort of questioning was quite bizarre almost. And let's see, come to Washington, D.C., you will see all sorts of debates. I'll pass on going to Washington, D.C. at this point. I think that is where the Libertarian Convention is going to be. I do not have tickets, and I don't plan on getting tickets for it. But yes, I don't necessarily. Debates are good. Okay, I have a question. Do you think debates ever change someone's mind? I've had the thoughts on that recently. have I ever personally watched the debate and decided to change my answer, especially when you're talking about presidential debates. Now, when I think of presidential debates, I'm not necessarily talking about like general, not general election, the primary debates like you see now with the presidential debates. I mean, like whenever the candidate is picked for each party and they go up to the main debates. Have you ever changed your mind at that point? Because I basically have been an independent, if not libertarian voter, since I've been able to vote, which isn't that many elections at this point. But I don't think I've ever really watched a debate and changed my mind. Now, I do think an inter-party debate, especially with a smaller party like the Libertarian Party, these debates can be helpful for you to kind of think about who you're going to vote, because simply the voting people who are going to pick you as that candidate is a lot less. But I don't know. I just don't know if it's ever necessarily really have changed my mind. Hopefully, I will not get no votes to not be a delegate this time. Hearing Tarman's libertarian story did give him a little bump up on my scale. Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly dislike him. But I don't necessarily think he's going to win. I think he's, as I've said multiple times at this point, I think he's running a professional campaign, which goes a long way for me personally liking you as a candidate compared to someone that's, I think, running more as a popularity stunt or as a joke to the party itself. And I think you'll probably, well, I don't know what it's like anymore. Um, Within the Libertarian Party of Texas compared to it was when I was a lot more involved. But I don't necessarily think that you'll get. I think get whatever you want to get. Let's put it that way. But it's possible it's become worse since I've kind of taken a step back from it. But I don't know if I ever necessarily. We'll see. We'll see what the future is within that. Uh, but yeah, let's see. Well, at GWU, my school is a liberal school. Yeah, yeah. I know that your school leans that direction for sure. And I mean, let's put it this way. One of my coworkers that I work with used to live in Washington, D.C., and I think he went to school in Washington as well. I don't know, I think it was at your school, uh, but he went to school in Washington. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, this is what I was thinking. He was basically telling me about all like the cool things you can see in Washington D.C. besides like the general main monuments and things. Trying to basically sell me on wanting to, tour the Washington D.C. But I just simply don't have any interest in that. But do you like debates? Because if you like debates, it could be very fun to watch and to think about. Like at one point, for my high school project, I had to do something, and that's originally how this YouTube channel started. But it was originally called Roundtable Decision, and then obviously that changed later. But my original idea, it didn't get approved by the principal and the person that was the teacher of the project, because I basically went to a IB school, so it's different than like the public schools. You had to have this big project that you would do throughout the whole year. And my original idea was to do debates, and I would get my fellow students to debate, or maybe even try to get some people from like the community to debate certain topics. And that idea got shut down because I couldn't necessarily prove how it would be beneficial in whatever way it was supposed to be. So I decided I would do roundtable decision, which would be more like in-depth topics over certain things for videos and for articles that I wrote a couple of things on. Crazy how it was me and you and one other person. We weren't conservatives as a troop. Well, let's just say our troop leaned very heavy towards the Republican viewpoint. I like debates when they don't have candid responses. Yes, very much. I like debates that feel personal. There's probably a better word for it, but I forget what it's. I think it's called like Cambridge style, where it's like very rigid and you have a certain time, and then it goes to the next person. Like it's a very planned out. Those aren't usually bad because it leads to more of like an academic debate compared to a like attack debate, like presidential debates can turn into. Those I don't mind too much. Yeah, like the Soho Forum. That's a good example of kind of like debates that I will watch, like whenever I'm kind of in the mood for it, which is often a lot because I like more educational content compared to like random videos, like say like Mr. Beast, for example, that is more just kind of random fun. I'm either watching some sort of educational video or I'm watching a movie. That's pretty much my content there. All day decisions are definitely referable. I'm a nerd like you. Yeah. Well, maybe you can convince me to get back involved, but maybe not. We'll see. Let's see if we can.
Like, do you think that?
No, I'm sorry, the big lie is a moniker developed by
No, I'm just trying to
media. Well, you asked me,
No,
do you want an answer?
I do.
No,
I'm trying to
I
understand
don't.
your answer.
Okay, the big lie is a name developed by mainstream media that they attach to Donald Trump. You're with me, right?
Yeah,
You're
no,
looking at me like
I just
this is
noticed.
news.
I noticed some.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone in the room knows this already. They characterized Donald Trump as having, gone for the big lie. That was the name they gave to it, the big lie. I got to do the air quotes.
It's censorship propaganda designed to scare people.
By a lot of people, that's right. It is also true that Donald Trump knew that the election was not nearly as fraudulent as he
So
characterized
you can read
it.
his mind.
No, we have statements that were leaked that he made that he knew some of what was going on.
What statements?
I'm sorry, I'll have to get back to you on that, and I promise I will. But I'm gonna go out of.
So my impression. So Jacob Hornberger, we haven't got to him, and we may can pull up his videos if we want to later on, if we get on more of a side tangent. He's you could tell me if I'm wrong necessarily on that. Like I said, I've kind of started getting into looking at these candidates. Not that I've put a whole bunch of research. I know he's been a part of the party a long time, but long story short, he's very much the left side of the Libertarian Party. Like he's that candidate. Chase Oliver is as well. I know Chase more than I know Jacob Hornberger. But long story short, he had many complaints after the debate for how it was formatted as well as the moderators. And he had a bunch of complaints there. But the reason I mentioned that is this monitor here who asked the question. Not that I think he's necessarily like 100% pro Trump by any means. I don't think he's necessarily that. But it was just an odd question, and especially the way he's answering back at Mike's answers here. It almost seems like he thinks the election was completely stolen, even though there was not necessarily claims to prove that. But at the same time, you could generally have a stance of not trusting it, but it's just bizarre, the type of questioning here. I want to make an entire tangent. Just because you are a libertarian doesn't mean you have to wear a damn gold tie. It feels like a gotcha question. Yeah, it does feel like a gotcha question. And you see, they both have their gold ties on. But I have to say, they're both not pure gold. They're not just solid gold. They both have that kind of elegant design to them. So it's not pure gold. Maybe they're trying to style it up a bit. It's also kind of funny that um, if you know anything about Joshua, the guy to his right there, it's kind of funny seeing him in a suit and tie. But anyway, we'll continue his response.
Go out on a limb and say, maybe you got a question for me?
That was the question. I've been telling you about trust, and I'm saying
He does clean up nice. That is true.
That seems a lot like you're doing a lot of censorship propaganda coming from the media, And I just
No,
want.
I don't think so. I don't think my website does anything to lead anyone to believe, anyone who looks at that website with good faith. No one is going to go to any one of my websites, either libertarianintelligence.org, which is the new AI bot, anyone who goes to mytremont.com, which is the one that's most difficult to spell. So I encourage you to go to goldnewdeal.org. Anyone that goes to any of those three websites, no one who looks at those websites in good faith is going to come to the conclusion that Mike Tremont likes censorship. That's dopey. And in fairness, I think you know that.
No, I don't. You also
I
have
stand
a
up for the
libertarian
First
attitude.
Amendment. I've always stood up for the First Amendment. I've had a problem with the federal government policy since 1996 on how it treats the internet and censorship. And that's the truth. That's the truth.
I think a lot of your website is great. You have what is a libertarian attitude with the medical healthcare policy on there, and you say on your website you ridicule others' personal choices. You have an authority.
See, I would kind of like for like a body language expert to react to some of this, some of these debates. They never will, because frankly, this has got what, just under 2,000 views, 1,192 views. So it's not like it's going mainstream. And I think there was only like 60 to 80 people there in attendance for this debate. So it's not like they're bringing in, you know, super high numbers for it to get to that point where somebody would. But just seeing the body language of all these candidates would just be kind of an interesting video. Like there's this one guy called Spidey. Is kind of the stage name he goes by. That's not his YouTube channel though, but he makes body language reviews or content, and just really informative videos. And that's kind of a side niche that I'll watch occasionally. But anyway.
An authoritarian streak suggesting the rest of us should be skeptical of your bona fides for participating in a discussion of libertarian public policy and to check yourself. That to me also seems like, I mean, ridicule might be rude, but it's also protected under the First Amendment. It seems a little censorship to me.
No, I don't think so. If we're in a public policy debate, if we're in a public policy forum, if we're 7 dudes up here, for example, and
I'm a dude in a bar trying to see who I want to vote for.
Okay, but this is the context of public policy. This is what we're all doing here. We're all talking public policy. If you have someone who aspires to a public policy role in public service, and you take it upon yourself to ridicule someone else's medical decisions, yeah, what are you doing? Like, really? Why would you think that in a public policy discussion, it's important to ridicule someone else's medical decisions? Medical decisions are personal. We all make them for a
Yeah, that is for sure your comment there. It says, well, as individuals do judge folks on body language. Like Hornberger doesn't assert confidence how he sits. Yeah, he's literally sitting like, I'll have to change my camera here. Let's see. I may not be able to get it really, but he's literally sitting like this, and he has like a bottle. It's like he's had a little bit too many drinks. And he's like, why am I here? What am I doing? Oh, it's time to speak. Let me sit up a bit. You know, like he is definitely not asserting confidence by any means. He's like, I literally think right now in that clip you just saw of him when they show the wide view, he's literally like, why am I here? What am I doing with my life? All right.
For a lot of weird reasons and a lot of personal reasons. They should not be affected
Would that include,
by officials commenting on how you make your decisions.
would that include preteens that opt for gender transition?
It would include the idea that where public policy should be, it should be, and where public policy shouldn't be, it shouldn't be. Public policy shouldn't be in your decision about, as an adult, what to do with your own body. As a child, I firmly believe that an age of consent has to be reached before you do anything permanent. In this country, we've all come to the conclusion, culturally, not led by public policy, we've all come to the conclusion culturally, remember, culture is upstream from public policy, we all agree with that we need an age of consent. Absolutely is. That's a practical matter. That's not I wish it were. We've come to the conclusion that we require age of consent for.
What do y'all think of that? Do you think that culture then leads to policy, or do you think that policy comes first, then it leads to culture? Like, kind of a common example this is about, but particularly transition topic or our trans topic, however you want to phrase that. And then you could kind of go off of that with the child subtopic of that. But kind of my main thing that comes to mind here is like, say, for example, gay marriage, right? That was a policy that the federal government had that then happened, and then you had to accept gay marriage within your states, right? That's kind of how it went. That's simplifying it a bit. But do you think that that came first? The policy came first, or do you think then the culture came after? Or do you think the culture happened for that policy to be made? Because in particular here in Texas, it was kind of like kind of I don't know. It was kind of I don't know how I would say Texas happened. I want to say it was more policy than culture, but I think that in general it was the culture that led to the policy within kind of the whole big scheme of things. But in like my local area and within my local um, sub areas, with how I was living and how I was raised and whatnot, I want to say that like the policy then happened to the culture. But in general, as I was just saying, I think the culture is what led to the policy. I'm kind of going in circles here, but so your new job is government affiliated. Well, I'm a teacher. I work in public education, or at least right now. I don't know how long I'm necessarily going to stay in public education, really. Either go private school or kind of do my own tutoring type of business. I haven't really decided that yet, but public education has its good and has its bad. But that's currently where I'm at now with special education in particular. But it says here, keep the government out of individuals' business, period. Yes, that's ultimately what it should be. And later, we're probably going to get to the clip in this debate. But he, as well as Jacob Hornberger and Chase, at one point throughout the debate, all basically Clint asked the question of um, the shot for COVID. Did you take the COVID shot? Was basically the question. And Mike, we'll probably get to this clip, but Mike was basically like, that's none of your business. It's my individual decision that I made for that particular case. That's kind of how I feel the same thing here. Like the individual should ultimately be in charge of their decision. And you can argue if an individual that's not an adult can make that decision. I think that's an argument that's a little bit more justified within the scheme of things. But as soon as you reach that adult stage, it's like it should be common sense at that point. And you say culture push the policy, our medical choices are no one's businesses. Exactly right. Exactly. Medical and any other choice for that matter, really. Um, Now, there's certain choices you can make that are definitely bad. Like, say, for example, pedophiles or whatnot. Like, their choice is obviously wrong. And I think, 99.9999% of the people would choose that. And no, right minded person with, like, is going to say, like, that's justified. But, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But essentially, like there's choices that cause harm, and there's choices that don't cause harm necessarily. And but a very basic choice, like a choice of if you took the shot or not, or if you want to smoke or not. Not that smoking is bad either. Are choices that you as the individual should make, and the government or other people around you, it doesn't matter what they think. It's ultimately your choice. Well, that causes harm. Do not harm. That's a good point of putting it. Yes, that's a good point. As long as your choice doesn't result in harm, that's a valid choice to be made. Yeah, that's a good way. Now, I could just hear it in my brain, like a Sebastian Gorka or whatnot, would be like, well, the choice to transition under the age of uh, of adult could cause harm, right? Where is that coming from? Hang on a second. I'll get the call after. I don't really necessarily want to answer the call right now, um, but we can do that after. Okay, that was very distracting. Oh, like I said, I'll answer the call after this stream, but not during, because I don't know if I necessarily have that ability to answer the call from Discord yet. Because Discord does all sorts of crazy things with my computer. It likes to change the audio, it likes to change the video. It's just annoying. But that's when I did my Getting the Answers podcast with Anna Voltis. We did it through Discord, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it did not.
For sexuality, and we should require an age of consent for permanent surgical procedures.
So specifically, what I'm pushing back against is the ridicule aspect of that. I perceive that to be one of the few tools that would not be authoritarian, that we could actually
That was what it was.
help mold the culture of the place we want to live in
Oh, wrong thing.
without using state
There you go.
violence to do so. I think
And you should.
you're specifically talking about public policy. You're saying
Absolutely.
but in our personal lives, ridicule is acceptable.
Absolutely. You can ridicule me, I can ridicule you. I'm not going to do it, and I'm probably not going to do it at all in 2024 because I'm running for public office. Everything I say needs to be taken in the context of public policy.
Okay.
And I don't believe it's appropriate for someone who aspires to public service or a public policy role to be ridiculing a fellow Americans or anyone else's decisions that they make about their personal lives.
I just want a show of hands of everybody in the room that thinks.
So before I basically have entered it before he answers the question, but well, let's just play it. Well, no, actually, no, I'll ask the question. He's about to basically ask the people in the audience if they think that COVID was like the most oppressive thing. So let's just listen here.
Thinks in your lifetime there's ever been a secure presidential election.
Yeah, secure president election.
Seems about right. One guy. Perfect. That's it. I just wanted to see who all believed that. Thanks.
Oops.
Oh, all right.
Ah. Oops. I think I've just full screened it, but oh well, that's good. Can we just have a common goal of just being a decent human to other humans? Yes, that's ultimately what, like, that's the ultimate question, is why is there so much hate or disgust or not liking of other people when we're all ultimately doing the same cause? Like, it ultimately comes down to the question, the philosophical question almost, of are humans inherently good or are humans inherently bad? Like, are our actions inherently for the good or are our actions inherently for the bad? And just real quick on that side tangent, you can look at Jacob right here, Jacob Horner here. He's got that like beard belly, and then he's got the hunched over neck. And then you got Michael Richtenwall, who's got his microphone up, and he's like sitting up straight, and he's got his glasses down, and he looks kind of pissed in this example. But anyway, got distracted there. But yes, he's definitely not asserting dominance, as you were mentioning earlier. But I ultimately think for that philosophical question, and I've gotten more pessimistic the more I think of this question, is that people's actions are inherently wrong more than they are inherently right. And the reason I think that is people are usually out for their own motivations first than thinking of other people's motivations. Like, the one example that comes to mind directly is not that you necessarily, I don't necessarily like to use this example because I don't think you have to be religious to be inherently good by any means. But you have that example of like a Mother Teresa almost, that her actions are almost inherently for other people than they are for herself. But her motivations for doing that could be for bad reasons. Like, for example, we don't know this, but you could be doing things for other people to try to gain a better eye within society, or to have people praise her when they see her or whatnot. She could be doing it for those reasons, and then it could be inherently bad why she is doing that, even though her actions are good, right? You could kind of go around in a circle there. Or as you say here, she could have been trying to buy her way into heaven, right? So she's like, well, if I do this, directly, I am definitely going to get into heaven, because all I have done in my life is help other people. In order for her to inherently do actions that are good, she would be having to do it for other people without those self motivational things. Like, for example, like the homeless, right? If you go in your car and you drive at a stop sign or stoplight, and there's a homeless guy there, and you give them some cash, or you give them a water or a can of soup or whatever, are you doing that because the motivations are good? Or are you doing that because you want something out of it? Like, not that he's going to necessarily get into the car with you and help you build your fence, or gonna do something else, but are you doing that because by you doing that action, it makes you feel good? So that action of feeling good, is that because you're doing it for a good reason, or are you doing that so that you get that reward of feeling good? You can ultimately go in a circle here, but ultimately, I think people's actions are inherently self motivated. I want to believe everyone is inherently good, but I am probably wrong. Yeah. I don't think I read that one, but like I said, I think people's actions are inherently bad. At least right now I do. And you say the reward of feeling good. Yes, I feel like that's the vast, vast majority of people. But then you could argue, like, that reward of feeling good, is that better than not doing it? So for example, if you give that can of soup to the homeless guy because you want to feel good, is the action still good because you gave them the can of soup? Or is your action bad because ultimately you're only looking for that reward, right? We're kind of repeating ourselves here a bit. But yeah. I mean, my motivations are trying to make the world a better place for my kids. Right. Now, how you go about that kind of depends on how pure those motivations are. So your base motivation, like Mother Teresa, could be to help other people, like to a great extent. In your case, to make a better place for your kids. But how you go about that and why you're going about each of those steps could determine if ultimately your goal was inherently good or inherently bad.
Please do, yes.
I was just gonna ask Mike if he got the COVID vaccine.
See, there's the question.
I think that's a great question. I think that's an excellent question. I'm really glad you asked it. And this is the answer. And this is the answer that people need to live with. It's no one else's business. Maybe I got 0.
So yes,
Maybe I got 30. No. You're going to have to live with the truth. And the truth is, I'm not going to tell you.
Moving on to a very hot topic that is kind of fringe, but I think extraordinarily important. Thomas Massey has released the J6 pipe bomb surveillance footage. And
So that was one of his questions too. Now, I talked about Clint several times at this point, and I ultimately should just make a video about my perspective just on Clint at this point. But his questions. Let me put it this way. As you say here, damn shots fired. Yeah, for sure. I thought that was his best line of this debate. I've watched the whole 2 hours and 40 minutes. I thought that was kind of his best line. And we mentioned this earlier in the comments. Your medical choice is your choice, right? And I don't care about any other reasons or motivations for why, and you shouldn't care either. The fact that it's even a question is kind of aggravating, especially for a mainstream libertarian debate here, right? For the presidents. But as I was saying, so Clint's questions were about COVID, were about January 6th, and were about states being able to secede. And Jacob Horner, in one of his separate videos talking about this debate before even the debate was posted, because he was doing it like as he was driving home, or not home, but driving to some other state, probably for some sort of candidate event. He was talking about how these questions didn't really seem purely libertarian minded, right? And I ultimately kind of agree with him in this case. And I would like to know y'all's thoughts on this too. Like, those questions seem to be targeting a very small, selective viewpoint for how you view the war or the policies, right? And hey Des, and nice to see you popped on in here, and hi back. And 4 people have good body language in this frame. Yep, the Chase has got good body language throughout. I can't remember this guy in the middle's name at this point. He's another one I don't think in this debate did a bad job. Oh, and you can see his feet here. We mentioned that earlier. Toad's feet. Yeah. Lars, yes, that's it. I don't think he did necessarily a bad job. Now, would he get my vote? Obviously, I'm not going to be there, but would he get my vote? Not particularly, I don't think. But he's not necessarily bad. Yeah, but I am willing to bet Chase was the best. Chase had good points. He's definitely the best policy guy there. Like, he's, by policy wise, he would be the guy who would have my vote. From performance wise, he didn't really have a great performance till like the very end of the debate. I thought, like, all of his answers were good, don't get me wrong, but you know how debates are all about charisma and all that. He didn't really get his juices flowing till kind of the very end of the debate, and then he kind of finished it really well. But from a pure policy perspective and his answers, Chase is by far the best candidate, and Lars by his policy answers too. And he's a bit more um, lively than say Mike is, who the main guy we're looking at here, since we picked him off the wheel. But it'd be interesting, especially I don't think I'm gonna want to rewatch this whole thing. If I end up doing this series on each of these candidates, I will end up watching the whole thing probably multiple times. But at this point, Chase would probably be first, and Lars and Mike would be probably tied at this point. Des says, I was talking to someone from Chase's team yesterday who said Lars is their second choice. Yeah, he honestly kind of impressed me because I know nothing about Lars. I knew a little bit from Mike, and I'll just explain this one more time because Des wasn't here when I said it. He was on a podcast of somebody else who I watch pretty regularly, and it was like an hour and 30 minutes, and they got into a lot of policy and a lot of just general get to know you type of questions. So I knew a little bit about Mike before this debate, but not a bunch. I wonder if they had to do with. Oh, wait, let me reread that. I wonder if that had to do with the moderator choice on why Chase didn't get as much gutso. I think I said that word wrong, but we'll just pretend that that's how you say it. Yeah, I think he was a bit timid. I don't think he was intimidated by the moderators by any point. He did get, if my memory serves right, he did get directly challenged by Clint for at least one of his answers, and it was about the COVID and his choice of taking the shot, and also his choice of being pro-COVID at the beginning with his Twitter. He had some sort of tweet that one of the candidates read off and blah, blah, blah. But I think he's just trying to be the most reasonable guy there, is kind of my impression I'm getting of Chase's strategy. He wants to give, good, solid answers, have a good policy to stand behind, and just be kind of that reasonable guy that's like, hey, if you pick me, you have either to pick from Joe Biden, who's practically dead, Trump, who's practically an idiot, or me, who is your reasonable guy. And I think, and younger, right? I think he has that going for him a lot too. So that's a big thing, right? I just haven't been paying attention since I left the party last year. Ours is a good team behind him. Trump, who was almost in prison. Well, that as well. That would have been a good one. I just say idiots just better. Even though idiot could be kind of kind. Mhm. But I do. I need to look more into Lars. So that would be one stream or video I can do. But he seems to have a good charisma to him. Like he's kind of interesting. He was very calm, like Chase throughout the debate, but he had a few moments where you could tell his juices got flowing a bit, and he was a lot more passionate about his answers. And as you say here, it is very kind. Yeah, it is very kind. Hmm. And well, you aren't wrong though. Yeah, well, yeah, that's an easy thing to predict there. But yeah, you were saying it. You haven't really followed it too much. I was explaining that earlier, Des. But I've stepped a long way from the parties, basically around the same time you did, really. Um, in long story short, but I don't necessarily know how close I am to getting back involved. But I've started to look more into things recently, especially as this presidential election is heating up. I was like, well, I kind of need to see who at least the LP is running with. So I've watched this debate and the South Carolina debate, and I think there's one other that I watched and whatnot. But and it says Lars was a founder of Adult Friend Finder. Yeah, I didn't know that till the end of the debate, where I think it was the end where he mentioned that and why he's a good candidate and somebody that's practical. You can at least come see me. That's pretty rad. Yes, it is. And yes, I know I can, especially now that I'm a lot closer uh, to the same county. I can probably go. I could probably go to some of the events, especially the ones that are a bit closer to this side of the town compared to the other side of the town. It is something I'm thinking about doing. I just don't necessarily want to go and then have my energy all high and then end up getting involved in it uh, a lot and not being able to really do it very well. I kind of want to, if I do get back into it, I want to basically do it at a time where I feel like it would be beneficial to do it, so to speak. I may go to DC. I don't know. Yeah, I will not be making it to the DC convention by any means. At least not now. Was planning to fly in for LP Texas convention, but we are going to be moving again around that time. Yeah, I haven't bought my tickets for Texas either. I probably won't buy my tickets for that either. We'll see. I will plan an event near you. That would be cool for sure. That would be cool. Confirmed why it's high. High with what? High with sweet tea. That's what it's here. Yeah. Okay.
And it appears to show a plainclothes cop identifying the bomb and then calmly walking away. Even after this device had been identified, they allowed women and children to walk past it.
Yeah, I haven't bought mine yet, and I am staff and Slack. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't know if it's necessarily so. Obviously, I was part of Slack for a brief time, and I think technically I still am, even though I haven't showed up. I'm not exactly sure how that works or not, but I don't think I necessarily have access to the forum. Not that I should anyway, and I purposely have not looked at it in case for some reason I still may have access to it, right? But I know on the Discord in particular, uh, that's still in the Slack channel. That's kind of interesting, and I haven't really looked at the Discord much either. So, but yeah, I know that I'm not. I don't even think I could be able to vote or be able to access the forum, but I do know that I can see the Slack channel in the Discord, which is kind of funny. I haven't really looked into it like I was saying. I basically got very uninterested in the party, you could say, after some events that got me annoyed, so to speak. You still on NAC? I am not still in NAC. I'm in Harris County, basically, but I'm a lot more towards the north side of Harris and the south side of Harris. No, you aren't. You missed 2 consecutive meetings. Yeah, that's what I thought. I missed the two consecutive meetings in a row, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, and that's another big reason why the Slack wouldn't have worked anyway. So yeah, was me moving out of the county eventually wouldn't have worked. So that's kind of interesting. We took some big hits being Team Des. Yeah, big life changes for sure. Then, ouch, Amanda. Yeah, that Team Des didn't particularly work too well, I have to say. I took them like a champ. I still love you. Yeah, I think you're the only surviving member. Maybe there's a couple of others. Well, no, Darren was maybe still there. I'm not sure. Like I said, I stepped a large part away from it, so I'm not really sure who's there or who's not. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Let's just play a little bit more of this. Yeah.
Without warning, this has led many in our community to question the J6 narrative and openly discuss the possibility that this device was a plan B, if you will, to ultimately criminalize the MAGA movement had the riots not gotten started at the Capitol. Do you agree? Should J6 prisoners be pardoned? And what should be done to the government officials if this is in fact proven to be a false flag? Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I think the J6 prisoners are being detained in an outrageous gulag system that is beyond belief. They should be freed. I don't think that any of these people were carrying arms except for the feds who planted them. So we're looking
There's his
setup,
answer.
and this doesn't mean that
A damn good reason, and that's even more problematic, I think, that the government actually.
Which one's the lizard man? Is it Michael Rechtenwall? Who I know is the big MC guy, if I'm not mistaken. Rechtenwall, yeah. Wreck the Reckenwall, whatever his website is.
In jail
Wreck the
for,
regime,
damn
that's
good
it.
reason. And Julian Assange, who languishes in prison for what is, from the government's point of view, a damn good reason, and that's even more problematic, I think, that the government actually wants that guy to be muzzled is a huge problem. Look, the underlying question really is important, to your point, Clint. Arguably, this is the most important question, and that is that we cannot trust our federal government. We cannot trust our state government. In most unfortunate cases, we can't even trust our local governments. It is true that your government took money from you and from everybody else in this room, pulled it up with money abroad, sent it over to Denmark, of all places, hired contractors and blew up a pipeline at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and did so in a way that would have been a generation ago characterized as an act of war against the people of Germany, but did so just because they didn't like the relationship between Germany and Russia. Yes, I think that this is essentially the issue of our age, which is, what do we do to pull down a political scheme that propagates itself through force and through lies, through coercion, and does so in the shadows?
See, the thing is, and we've also mentioned this several times already, I think. It's like this response, you can tell he's passionate about this issue or his answer, but the way he's going about demonstrating it is just so dry. Like, you don't feel the passion, even though I think he is passionate about it. He almost feels defeated, but at the same time, he's very much like within this debate and putting money into it and everything. He is just a cop. Low. I mean, it's true. He presents like a cop. I mean, it's a true statement, and that's why just that fact alone, he's probably not going to win the nomination. But we'll see.
I've seen the video. I've seen what I'm told is the video. It is inconclusive. But we should not be up here debating facts. I mean, my goodness, how low life can we be? This is about principle, okay? If we find out that that was planted by someone, put up to it by the government, doesn't have to be a government employee, right? This needs to be prosecuted all the way through until its possible conclusion. We need to stand up for the truth. If for nothing else, why are we here?
Quick follow-up, and then we'll go to you. As a former police officer, I'm sure you know, if you were to have identified a pipe bomb, would you have permitted children and women to walk right past it without even notifying them?
I don't even know how to answer that.
I think it's pretty easy.
But of course it is.
Okay.
The danger to the community, if a police officer is worth a flying damn, it is his or her ability to help a community avoid danger.
So if an officer doesn't do that, what does it tell you?
It tells me he needs to be put down like a dog.
Okay. Mr. Hornberg.
See, like his face right there. What do you think the emotion of that face is? He just said, "Put down like a dog," or "He'll be put down like a dog," or whatever his phrase was, and then that's the face. It's like a death stare or something. You've turned me to the dark side, turned me liberal, and then the love side. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. It's much more caring side, that's for sure. And like my whole stance is I don't think any particular side is 100% right compared to the other side. Like I don't believe in that absolute by any means. But I do definitely think the left side, or as you put it here, the love side, is the far better approach. And the policies I mostly agree with. I don't think I'm full on as much as Des is by any means. Or, yeah, but we'll see. Caring more about humanity than money. Yep, that's a good way of putting it too.
Left unsaid in all these commentaries is the obvious point. The FBI does these.
So, what do you think of Jacob Hornberger? I've mentioned him a couple times, and I just don't know what the impression I get about him. He rubs me the wrong way, and I'm not necessarily sure exactly why. Besides that, he generally just doesn't seem to really display a lot of caringness for his candidacy. But at the same time, like his policies are probably more like Chase than like a Joshua or a Rectenwall is. So he's kind of an interesting hybrid, and he also, as I've already mentioned multiple times, does not like Clint.
And what we need to do is abolish the FBI. Along with the CIA and the rest of the industry. But yes, pardon all these people. This was a protest gone awry. We've seen all of our lives protests that get out of hand. Okay, disorderly conduct, trespass, or whatever. But to put these people in jail for long periods of time is an abomination. If people were going to take over the government,
I think you're exactly right.
We'll go down a little bit further. I follow him on TT, but I just don't have a good read. He is forgettable. Yes, he's 100% forgettable. But like I don't necessarily can't speak for you by any means. But like if Chase Oliver wasn't there, and maybe Lars wasn't either, because Lars is more left than right for sure. or even if Lars was there, he probably would align the most with what like a Chase has to say. But Chase just comes across as much more likable as a candidate. And for the most part, I agree the most with Chase's policies than Jacob, even despite the candidate's personality. But yeah, I just don't necessarily have any sort of impression about Jacob besides just generally not having a too favorable of one.
I think you're exactly right. Josh has done an excellent job getting down to the 5-yard line. Let me see if I can get us across the goal line. First of all, in answer to your excellent question, Vivek Ramaswamy is a total fraud. He is astroturfing, not us. He's astroturfing the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. He is so full of crap that I don't even know how people would look at him. He has designed his policies to attract, the coattails of Donald Trump. I mean, good for him. It looks like it's working, right? I mean, if all you are is a political social climber, then I guess you have to admit he is successful in some weird way. Look, Josh is right. We need to campaign in a very principled fashion on what it is exactly that we want to do.
See, the thing about Vivek was this is my theory about Vivek. I think he was trying to get Trump's vote. And what I mean by that is if Trump were to get indicted and actually end up in prison, he was trying to get his vote and as a result become the president. Now what ended up happening was the indictments took too long and whatnot. And I essentially think that he got threatened by Trump by saying, "Hey, if you keep going with what your policies are, with what you talk about, I will basically destroy any sort of chance you have with my voters in the next 4 years if you decide to run again, or if maybe he becomes the vice president under Trump or something like that." And he was like, "Okay, it's not worth the risk." So now, uh, shoot, what's her name? Not Haley. Man, forgetting a lot of names today. But for the Republican, she essentially was Nikki Haley. Yes, thank you. She was like, "Okay, I'm going to take up your idea and be that candidate where if the terribleness were to happen, I would become the candidate for the Republican Party. That terribleness being if Trump can no longer be the the candidate for the Republican due to him being in jail or for whatever reason that there could be." Let's see. Chase is young and passionate enough with old dudes. Yes, that's a big reason why I like Chase the most. Is you got two 80-year-olds who are for the other parties, and it's always been that way for a while, or at least high 70s, low 70s. But old dudes with white hair or no hair. You know, we don't need that. He is a snooze fest. Yes, he is. And then, amen, Amanda, yes, to that previous comment. Except for Vermin, that being Vermin Supreme. Yeah, I like what Vermin does about the how's the word about like the politeness of political parties or the idea of how we vote for our candidates, right? He makes a joke out of it, and it really is kind of a joke the way it is. Like he's ultimately very good at doing that, satire type of commentary. I don't know if satire is a perfect word for it, but that's what I like Vermin the most. Political satire, right? That's what I like him the most. Now, I don't think he'll ever be able to be the president or be the main nominee for the Libertarian Party because you just simply don't have enough people that are into it. But I really like his strategy. Yeah, it is great. Vivek was a total ChatGPT candidate. Yeah, ChatGPT with a MAGA programming, you could put it. Vermin Supreme is our president. Now we aren't running in the LP. We support Chase. He will get me ponies and glitter. Yes, he will. Didn't he do something in the Democratic convention? If they did they have a convention, he did something with some Democratic candidates not too long ago with political satire. Let's see, I missed something that I was going to mention. Now we aren't running an LP. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that y'all were running an independent uh, candidacy, and I was mostly just thinking back to the previous elections that happened. But yeah, 2012 lesser known candidates debate. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He does great with the political satire, and we definitely need a lot more of that. And hopefully, it will continue.
The reason for this is so that it makes it impossible to back up on it, right? So that what really matters to us is so clear that there's no way to reverse it. There's no way to take your foot off the gas pedal, right? You've got to tie your foot to that gas pedal and then put a brick on it and then super glue it to the frame. Otherwise, what will happen is that you will get AstroTurf and people will come into your movement in an adjunct fashion, right, adjacent to your principles, and undermine you from the side by suggesting that there are other issues that are important, and they become weird, they go sideways, and they give you a bad look. No, we can't let that happen. We have to campaign on our principles very, very clearly and discern between what is and what is not part of our platform.
We came in third. Berman Glitter bombed a icky dude. A homophobe, yes. So that was in 2012? Or was that more recent? Because I definitely remember hearing something about it being more recent, but maybe that was just a memory of something that happened in the past. I could have the date definitely confused on it. But yes, I think that's the incident I was thinking about with the guy who got, the glitter bombed, so to speak. And this is Clint here, just for anybody that doesn't know. And then this is, I forget his name. I think it was Jeff or something. I don't remember. But he's the other moderator. That's more of the independent, somewhat libertarian voter. You were a fetus in 2012. Why, Lo? No, I was definitely not a fetus in 2012. But
I want to follow up.
yeah,
Let's
no
go,
comment.
Josh, then we'll go to you, then we'll come back up here. Again, so the percentage of Americans, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but that dislike those agencies, and I do, just like all of you do as well. But it's around the same as the Fed, and so half the country or so or more.
With due respect to my esteemed colleagues, left us a little bit wanting. It is true that only 37% of the American public, if you say so, that sounds actually a little high to me, are frustrated with the Fed. That's not the right way to address it. The right way to address it is to remind people that inflation is such, oh God, you are a better human being than I am. You're really a good guy. Okay.
Now he spit on my money.
Yeah. Okay. The right way. It's okay. The right way to address it is to remind people that inflation isn't just naughty, which is something you can hear from a Republican or a Democrat, but
Is that a Tom Woods laughing? I need to make my chat bigger. It kind of sounded like him. And you may find it somewhat funny. So in the beginning of my libertarian getting into it, I don't know how she would say it, like my introduction to libertarian was, one of them was Tom Woods, and I would listen to his podcast a whole bunch. Well, not a whole bunch, but it was in the rotation, so to speak. But long story short, it's kind of interesting how this is like 2 years ago at this point, when one of the main allegations came out of several. That definitely put it into that. But yes, especially so basically that was my introduction to it. And then I started to get more involved into the party. And then I joined the party and became the county commissioner. And then I ended up going to the convention, ended up getting voted for being slack. That didn't last too long at all. But long story short, I ended up meeting Des and Amanda and Darren and Aaron and several other people. Listen, that just stopped, and then which I'm very thankful for. Definitely got influenced in a lot better direction, so to speak. I had a very similar entry. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of common entry, especially Dave Smith as well. Uh, he introduces a lot of people to the party, partly because of just how big he is in the Libertarian Party media sphere, at least. Uh, Luckily, yeah, Dave Smith is a whole separate topic we could have. Man, we had a great team, and we all learned, and you and I got lucky. Yeah, it's definitely good memories we had, and I'm sure we can continue some of them uh, in the future for sure. But I definitely enjoyed that part of the time for sure.
Undermines your way of life, undermines your ability to make ends meet. And that the change that we need in this country is at an institutional level. It's not just a matter of replacing one Republican or one Democratic politician for another. That's how you get into the conversation about the Fed.
We'll go here and we to you.
Yeah, I think every member of this party needs to ask himself and herself a very important question. What kind of presidential campaign do you want? Do you want one?
So we'll listen to this because this is actually a point he brought up several times. This being Jacob Hornberger, but he brings up an interesting point that I would kind of be curious to know y'all opinions on his point here as well. But we'll go ahead and let it play because I don't necessarily want to ruin the surprise for anyone that hasn't seen it.
One's going to be talking about conspiracies here and there. Do you want one that's going to make the principal case for what we believe in? We're trying to achieve freedom here. And my big beef with these guys, okay, they want to abolish the CIA and the FBI, but what they haven't told you, and this goes all the way back to the South Carolina debate, they all agree with continuing the socialism of Social Security and Medicare for the next 25 years. They call it an off-ramp. They want socialism reform, just like they want immigration reform.
All right. This wasn't the point I thought it was from the debate. It must have been later on. But essentially, the point I was going to bring up, and I'll try to summarize it because we may not get to it here, was basically he, let's just put it here to look at that beautiful. Oops, let me go back a bit. That way we can look at this beautiful bald face here. Anyway, man, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So the point I was gonna bring up was with Jacob is he was basically like we needed to change the way we as the Libertarian Party think about how we run a presidential candidate because we've only have gotten 1 to 2% in the past couple of elections. We need somebody who can get us a much higher percent, and we have to change the way we go about running a campaign in order to achieve that. We need to get out of the grass in-depth viewpoints of how our policies are going to work and have a campaign that's much more approaching to everybody, maybe a little less vague, but more approachable. And that's how you ultimately are going to get your percentage higher. He said it a lot better way than that, but it was kind of interesting. Also, these people look asleep. She's even having to use her arm here to support her head, and he looked like he just blew a big yeah. Yes. So that was kind of an interesting idea, and that brings me to a video that I'm thinking about making. I've mentioned it in my well, I didn't mention a video title in my channel update video, but one of the topics I'm thinking of doing is about RFK Jr. So Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's running as an independent, but there's a idea out here that that he may want to grab the libertarian uh, label, or not label, but be the libertarian candidate, so to speak. And there's a theory about if one that will happen, and if two if that's a good idea. And the theory basically goes, if he, let's say hypothetically, he becomes the nominee and gets voted and becomes the president. Well, not the president necessarily, he would have to win the election, but becomes the nominee for the Libertarian Party. He's the guy. Would he be able to reach us that like 5 or 10% vote figure that is ultimately highly desired, even though he doesn't agree with a lot of the libertarian policy, so to speak? Is that a risk you're willing to take from a party perspective to reach that potential votes, right? He would have to win the nomination first, but that's an idea. And I'm thinking about potentially making a video about that as an idea and going a little bit more uh, in depth in that topic. But it is kind of an interesting theory. If we are willing to not stand on principles, then why not just run as a DRR, Democrat R, for sure. Yeah, you have to be willing to stand on principles, and that's the part of why I like the Libertarian Party the most, right? Is that it's highly principles based, and that's why ultimately in these debates they argue so much about policy. Like you watch your other debate. Now we haven't seen one in the Democratic Party, but we see them in the Republican Party now. These debates are very loose policy based. It's more emotional based. They're not getting into the deep, dirty details of how the policy is going to end up working, like you see with these debates. If RFK Jr. is the nominee, I will not vote for him. Abstain from me. Yeah. I don't know. Some of his policies I like, and definitely there's a lot I don't. That is definitely for sure. I have to say, state and county focused R will give up. Mhm. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, I think the more I got involved within the party, the more I got annoyed with politics in general. Like there there's a bunch of infighting that happens really within any party, right? But like you would think people would get along to serve the common purpose, and it kind of goes back to our philosophical idea where we were thinking about earlier. Uh, but ultimately, people are self motivated, especially with the Libertarian Party, because the Libertarian Party in a lot of ways compared to say like a Democratic or a Republican party, you're able to move up the ranks at a lot faster pace, right? So if you're purely for self-motivated reasons, you can become uh, in charge to some extent in a pretty fast pace. And then eventually, if you play your cards right, can become the top dog for the party itself. Now, in the case of Texas, the person who is the main person in charge is not that way, but and neither is the vice president or the vice chair, whatever you want to call it. But there was somebody who was very much self motivated that almost grabbed it from the leadership, so to speak. But anyway, that's getting slightly distracted there. I think it's a terrible idea. Yes. Sorry, chomping for soup. Chop, 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 chop. Yeah. hmm But what the laws are written to keep others outsiders, Greens, libertarians, independents. Kathy. Oh man, I remember Kathy. The fact that I met her that one time makes it even more kind of funnier to me. because she reached out to me when I was the Nacogdoches chair. She essentially wanted to show up to an event that I had planned, and let's just say it's just, yeah, she's quite the character for sure. And then her husband running as a was a Republican, right? Yeah, that was just crazy. And then she sold, like, not sold secrets, but she was like a spy almost. I don't know why you would care that much, but anyway, it's whatever. Harris County is still recovering. I could believe it. For sure. I had another thought, but I completely lost it. Not, it wasn't that important. Oh, that's what it was. With the laws. Yeah, especially in certain states. Like Texas is very bad about it. With the way the laws are written. You were basically always in a battle with the government itself to be able to even have the names on the ballots, and that cost a bunch of money. So all the money that's used for to win ballot access is used for that, and there's no money left over to have money to run like a really big campaign. So the more local you get, the more likely you are to make an impact, so to speak. But at the same time, those super local races like school boards uh, are county commissioner or something like that, just kind of the super local ones. They don't necessarily take a lot of money to run that election or to win that election even, but it's more money that you're going to get as a libertarian candidate. There's just you don't have any money to play with. And then the money that really is going to be used for the governor, for the attorney general, for all those other big boy positions. Um, there's no there, we don't have near enough money to make a big impact with it for the big races. So it kind of comes down to the political strategy you have as a state party or even as the national party. Do you focus on running a really big governor race, or do you focus on winning those local elections? But then if you focus on local strategy, you need to have candidates that are willing to run, right? Anyway, the Paxton endorsed Tom Glass this time. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I am legit cackling over that. It is so ick. I hated voting in the Woodlands. People being nosy, looking at what representative I voted for. Really? You felt like people were looking over your shoulder, or yeah? When I was voting in Nacogdoches, you didn't have that worry. I could have walked in and put my foot up on the table and like hold up my paper real high and circled or check marked or whatever the ballot box, and nobody would have known because there was like two people in there when I voted with the last time I was in Nacogdoches. Yeah, they looked at your votes. Yeah, uh, yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit dramatized a bit, but I mean, yeah, there definitely wasn't that worry. I think I told you this, Des and Amanda, but the guy who was the county commissioner, I think, is who I had to speak with to pass the county convention or whatever I had that first time. Whoever that was, I had to turn the paper into. I had a discussion with him. Oops, and he essentially voted for a libertarian, not that last election, but the election before. So we had a little bit of a discussion there, and I was like, "That's kind of interesting." The fact that county commissioner did that, I said that he did. And I don't think he's necessarily voting for Jorgensen with that last election. But anyway, I voted right before I moved to California. Yes, it was true. Oh, that is kind of crazy. I can see it though with the Woodlands. It was crazy there. Hey, by the way, make sure you are registered to vote. Yeah, I need to change. Well, actually, no, I don't. Well, I do. I need to change my address. And then I would probably change the county too. So I do need to check on that. But when I was living with my parents, I had my new registration card come in, but that's obviously in the wrong county now. So I do need to change that. Tomorrow is the last day. Then yeah, I definitely need to change it. Unless anyway. Yeah, I can. Yeah. And then those same people surrounding me and my father questioning us why I voted for that. Really? Wow, that is crazy. That you got like legit questioned about it. Hmm. I don't even know what to say to that. That is just bizarre. Tomorrow is the last day. You can do that online. I got my Texas card in the mail. That's kind of funny. Holy crap! In Cali, you get your Texas voter reg. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, weird. That's kind of weird. All right, let's see if we can't get this video playing a bit, just to see what his answer was here. I will tell you all about it right on Discord. They sent it to my old address. That makes a little more sense, but still, that's kind of crazy. And I don't know if we'll necessarily be able to do Discord call tonight, but you could definitely tell me about it probably tomorrow. We'll have time tomorrow for sure. But we'll see. Maybe you can tell me today. I don't know. We will see. I don't know how much longer I'm planning to go here. We're already at 2 hours, which seems kind of crazy.
We shouldn't go to conspiracy theorist realm. I think it's mandatory that we do. So I would like to know what you believe happened from the origins, to the lockdowns, to the vaccines, and what the punishment should be.
It's the same number that I had before. I got a new phone. That's a long story. I ended up finding the phone like 6 days later. Was in like stuffed like really, really far into like the couch cushion. Like I have no idea how I can even like get it that far, but it was quite crazy. Let's see. Because you like chatting with peace and love. I lost the number. Oh, you lost the number. I can send it to you on Discord once I finish here. Yeah, but it's the same number. It's possible that something got finicky because there was a few numbers I had to basically delete from my phone and then like put them in again, and it started working. It was quite bizarre.
Should be for those
That's Apple
involved.
for you, though.
If willing, I'd also like to know, you don't have to answer this, as you said, if any of you received the mRNA COVID gene therapy and why, and why if so. You don't have to answer all.
So here's that question directly that I mentioned. And we've already had a discussion on it, so we're not going to spend too long here. But just the fact that that's a question in the debate stage at the Libertarian Party is rather disgusting. Them wanting to know your medical history directly relating to COVID and the COVID shot is simply just aggravating.
You have medical privacy, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Go ahead. You can start off.
By the way, I didn't answer the Social Security problem question, but if I can have just 3 seconds on it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. This election is going to be about who's got the guts to tell the American people the truth, and that is that Social Security is evil. Social Security is a plan that brings young people into a system and promises them a negative rate of return, if any at all, and does so knowingly, and robs them of a financial future that they could be able to achieve. It costs them, average Americans, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their lives. And this system is propagated just because it was designed badly. Now the government doesn't know what to do to keep it going other than bringing in more people to abuse. So it's truly an evil program. Regarding COVID, what happened is the American people were taxed. That money was taken from us and from a lot of people around the world and a lot of people around the government. It was pulled up at the federal level and was sent through 2 layers of difficult to name multinational corporations, and finally landed in part, as well as a lot of other places, by the way, which is not unimportant, in part landed in a laboratory in Wuhan, which leaked Please God, let's find out that this was a mistake. We don't know this yet.
So just because we didn't hear that beginning part of the question, he essentially asked the candidate to describe the steps of COVID and what happened with it. And then that last part of the question was if you took the shot or not. So that's the question, in case you were wondering why he's talking about all this other stuff and not that last part of the question.
Leaked the virus. The Chinese government found out about it relatively early, decided to cover it up at the expense of thousands, if not millions of lives immediately, and possibly dozens of millions of lives in the long run if they had done a better job of containing it, which would have required them being honest about it up front. What are we up to now? 2 months later, it finds its way to Europe and to the United States, where the federal government started learning about it and almost immediately started lying to us about it because it internally embarrassed itself into having information that it realized it should have made public weeks earlier. It, in my view, illegally pressured the pharmaceutical industry to begin working on a vaccine, and it did so through a couple of ways that are completely unethical. One is that we have standing federal law that says, you ask for the whole story, so I'll wind up and someone else can take it from here.
I'll follow for you.
The federal legislation was already on the books protecting the pharmaceutical industry from related liability, which undermines the ability of markets to work as they should. And in this particular case, it was particularly damaging because it brought to market a vaccine that had no business coming to market when it did.
That's what I want to follow up with, and I want everybody to factor this into your answer as well. If you were president when that vaccine came to market, and they're going to be looking to you to make a recommendation or to get the jab on television, what would you do?
Well, you can't recommend that someone take it. What you can
See, this isn't necessarily a bad question. Like, if you're going to ask a question about COVID or about, the policies behind it, this is not a bad question or approach to it. I still don't necessarily think it's a good question to even ask, but I've been dogging this moderator in his questions so far. This was probably the best question that he had in this debate, in my opinion. But I do think that it's still kind of a unwarranted question, but at least it's a question that's a lot better than those others that were asked. And we'll see what his response here was.
you can do is recommend that this is the data that we have. You can disclose everything that went into developing that vaccine. Importantly, and I think this gets swept under the rug often, one of the things that needs to be disclosed to people before they take the vaccine is what the relationship was between the government and the pharmaceutical firms that developed the vaccine. What were the pressures? What were the financial incentives? I think people have a right to know, for example, before they get a vaccine, that there are people on the CDC who had to approve this and then push this that were seeing significant financial remuneration because of their decisions. I think that that's important for you to know and important for your doctor to know.
Now that we've had kind of a truncated version of what transpired, if you could just not cover that aspect and go a little bit deeper, I'd appreciate it, Josh. Go ahead.
Sure.
Once again, it is anyone's business what our medical choices are. Do they ask about abortions or other vaccinations? It is no one's business. No government need to know about business. Right. And that's why the question's still not one that even should have been asked. But if you are going to ask a question about COVID, that's the best approach. Like, what would you have done as president as a response about it? Now, he still asked about the shot directly and what he would have been done about that specific issue. But, it's still just very aggravating and annoying that it was even a question. And it takes up a good probably 40-50 minutes of this whole debate just over that one question that shouldn't have even been a question in the first place.
Well, let me start off by saying I absolutely did not take the gene therapy. My kids didn't take the gene therapy. My wife didn't take the gene therapy. My job tried to force everybody at our shop to take the gene therapy, and I organized our shop to say that our last day would be December 10th. On December 9th, they came and said, we're going to end the mandate. We're not going to make you guys do it. Look, here's what happened. So people probably got together and said, hey, we need more global control. And so we're going to release a new disease. And
This was not just the government.
I, I had to do that. Just look at his face. Like somebody needs to post that as his profile to his campaign. And you know those campaign signs? You gotta have that for sure. Like that is the face for that. Anyway, people should just be aware of what they are. Let me reread that. People should just be aware of what they choose to put in their bodies. Lizards, yes, like for real, like that's the picture of it. Absolutely, I could see your perspective on that now for sure. But he should have that face as his campaign sign. Is what I'm saying. You would get your votes that way. You would win the nomination that way for sure. And I mean, his point about that is a good point. Like, obviously, the more what's the word? The more information you give without bias, like the more information and facts, and not like opinions you give about something, especially with the pharmaceutical and the COVID shot and all that with it. The better educated the people will be. Nothing wrong with that at all. So that is answer is not necessarily bad for sure. I have a video of him licking his lips like a lizard compilation from the South Carolina debate. Yeah, you have got to send me that for sure. Whenever I do the video about him, I'll definitely have to use it for sure because he's definitely not my favorite, and that's rather obvious. And these chairs must be uncomfortable because look, everybody's kind of leaned up, and even Chase isn't even sitting in his chair the right direction. And then you got Jacob, who's now a little bit more upright, but he's still got his beer belly sticking out. I don't think he's had a good posture throughout this entire debate.
Yeah, okay. It goes to something that is really fundamental to our campaigns, and that is the fact that you cannot trust your government. You brought it up in a number of different ways, right? You brought it up with regard to the pipe on January 6th. I brought it up with regard to the Baltic pipeline. We brought it up with regard to the Federal Reserve System. We brought it up in the context of Social Security. The fundamental message, piece of it, has got to be the government is not your friend. You cannot trust the government. And for a variety of reasons. There are forces that drive the elitists, the political class that runs our government, to do things that are not in your interest, that are in their own interest, to cover things up, to keep their power, to lie to you. Okay? This idea that, well, maybe it's malicious and maybe it's just dopey. No, I'm sorry. It's malicious. There are a lot of people in the government who are dopey. Trust me on this. And by the way, yes, I am qualified to conduct a criminal investigation. And I can tell you that a lot of people need to go to jail.
All right, I have a quick follow-up, 30 seconds, we'll come over.
I just like this wire. He's always pointing, and then you got Clint and his mustache or goatee, whatever you call that. But she's back here. She's awake now. He's had this. I'm pretty sure he's had the same face throughout this entire debate. I'm not sure what that face would be called, but he doesn't look interested. Doesn't look pleased. Actually, I think I know what it is. He's like, why in the hell did I spend all this money and sitting in the front row to watch these 7 people? I could be doing a lot better things right now. That's that reaction. And then him back here with this mask is kind of funny because at first, his beard's kind of taken over. The mask doesn't look proportional. Anyway,
So you were a police officer for a long time, and then you worked in the White House. Did you see that malicious behavior in person?
That's a really interesting question. I have never seen at the federal level decisions being made that I felt were intentionally made just to keep someone in power. Remember that my boss's 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 boss's.
So he worked in the White House to some extent. I don't know still what he did. He didn't say it here, and I've only done very basic level research, so I don't know what his position was in the White House. But you would think his answer would be a lot more direct in this answer. You'd think he would just simply say yes, Anyway, you think even if he makes up a lie, not that he should be lying, and it is kind of good that he didn't in some ways, but anyway, it's just kind of bizarre as an answer. This question he did not do great on. Drugs. I could be doing drugs. That is what he is thinking. Yeah, yeah. Like he's definitely something better than sitting at this debate for 2 hours and 40 minutes and 9 seconds. That is probably because he is fed. CIA vibes for sure. He could be a plant for sure. Maybe he's a plant from the Republican or Democratic Party. It's like, hey, let's get our insider perspective here and see if we can't get me in. I'll give you all the juice.
His boss was president of the United States. It's not like I was having tea with him in the Oval Office every day. Too bad, right? But to your point, nonetheless, to your point, he was the guy who said, read my lips, no new taxes. He was lying to us. And that matters.
How many people here have been publicly shamed for wearing or not wearing a mask? Exactly. How many people, exactly, either way, how many people have been publicly shamed for taking the vaccine or not taking the vaccine? All right. So how does that make everybody feel? It makes people feel like crap. We got to stop telling other people how to live their lives, and we got to stop using government to tell other people how to live their lives. That is the bottom line.
And that was Lars's biggest point. 100% his biggest point. As Amanda says there, Lars, yes. That like I said, I watched that was one of his big shining points for sure. And kind of what we've been saying throughout this entire debate. And we are getting close. So we don't got too many clips.
To your point, one of the reasons why it is so evil inside the federal government, and it is, one of the reasons it's so evil is because it propagates, right? It moves like all propaganda and like so many other ideas. And you have a number of companies who feel under pressure, either in order to get federal contracts or just to comply with the mob because they see the federal government pushing this crap.
I want to make it clear that
We got 20 minutes left of this debate.
I do support the Voting Rights Act of the 1960s.
Preach, yeah, for sure. I may clip that for TikTok. You still a TikToker, Amanda? Still a TikToker? I got a couple of coworkers that are like majorly into TikTok. I still kind of find it pretty funny. I still don't have it. And I don't think it would be a good idea for me to get it because I probably would be addicted to it way too much. God, I hate Josh. Yeah, he's, as Amanda says, he looks arrogant and he is arrogant. I'm pretty sure he thinks like he's the best ever and he should be the one in charge. See, the weird thing is, I know he got elected to be the vice chair of the Libertarian Party as a whole, but then he didn't show up. He showed up to like the first two meetings, I think, because I was still kind of involved with it then, and then he just disappeared. And I want to say he's not the vice chair anymore. I could be wrong, but I want to say that is the case. And now he's running for the presidential bid, so to speak, for the Libertarian Party. It just seems kind of bizarre, but everybody kind of from the outside perspective I have and still vaguely follow seems to still be in support of him, for the people that voted for him in the first place, I should say. It's like that didn't necessarily kill his reputation, so to speak. It's very bizarre to me. Anyway, I run the LP Texas TT TikTok. That's funny. I would say I feel kind of sorry for you. Hopefully you at least like it doing that, but I don't think I could do that. I would test my patience for sure. You got to be a real lover of TikTok. It's a grift. He stepped down because he said they were as corrupt as the former LNC. Grifter's gonna grift. See, I don't trust his motivations for that. We've got into that discussion earlier too. He's definitely not one I would trust his motivations being pure. was probably just too much work. He didn't want to do it, and maybe he saw his future being running for this Libertarian Party and not being, the vice chair and being bogged down with that. Compare him to the secretary, and those motivations are very much different. Like she is full on for being the secretary of the Libertarian Party. Like that is her thing. She wants to be the best ever secretary the Libertarian Party has, right? That's her motivation. Like what she's doing there, from her perspective, is coming from maintaining her support for being the secretary. Obviously, she's pretty crazy, but it's different than like Joshua's motivations for sure.
I think 2 minutes because yes, I know, and we already went absolutely ballistic on that one. So I'm going to make this one an easy one. I would like to know from your perspective, who has been a better president?
Look at that face right here. Like what is? And then he's finally got a little bit of a smile, but he's still not looking very happy by any means. I just make videos. I don't respond much because I don't want to speak out of turn. Just make sure what I post is in line with the LP Texas platform. Now my personal page is different. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And it's probably the most effective strategy or campaign that the LP Texas can do, running a social media rather than I don't know, outreach at like the rodeo or something, right? Where you are going to meet people there, but you're probably just going to get a lot more eyes and a lot more views from social media. But that job seems quite stressful, especially if you were to respond to comments, right? Because then what happens if you say something that you agree with, but say, 20, 30, 40% of the select members don't, and now you get in trouble, and now there's a vote against you, and then you can potentially be removed, all because of one kind of vague comment potentially. So that seems quite stressful. So that approach definitely makes sense.
President Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
As weird a question as that is, I actually find that a little bit easy. And the reason I find this easy is because it's important that we don't trust the state. The state is not your friend. The state does things that are not in your interest. Joe Biden is the state. I've been following this guy in a weird way since he was in his 40s, and I got news for you. Those of you who think that he's an idiot because he's so old.
Oh God, I'm just kind to people in my staff row. Yep, that's a good approach to have for sure. Like you definitely can't get too political, and you definitely don't want to make somebody mad because then they'll go in some campaign against you, and it doesn't even take that much for it to happen. So it's definitely something that does make sense. But it's good to see that you still have a big passion for it. So that's kind of what matters the most, really. Now I want to know what Termite did in the White House. I know that's the thing. He didn't say it, but I am interested. It sounded like he wasn't a cabinet member by any means, but he seemed to work for somebody as staff in the White House. I just don't know what it was.
Old would be really disappointed to know he was not smart in the 1970s. Okay, it's been a steady decline, but it hasn't gone off the cliff.
He was retarded before the aneurysm.
He
just has a speech impediment.
He is the vehicle of the state. Now, having said that, Donald Trump is not someone you can trust. I know that we had a little thing earlier. Maybe you see it differently, Brad. And maybe he's your guy. That's cool.
He's my guy.
Well, you're standing up for him. That's your guy. You go for it. But
You don't follow
I don't.
Come on, that's the big lie.
Well said. I don't trust Donald Trump. I was in New York in the 80s. I got a long history of disliking this guy. but his instincts are correct, that the state is not your friend, that we need to take down the swamp.
Thank you. I reject your false dilemma.
You reject
They both were terrible. No, here's the thing. Obviously, it's Biden. Biden's been in the government doing these things forever. I mean, longer than I've been alive. And I'm 40.
Obviously Biden, guys. You agree? Obviously Biden? I'm not so sure. Let's skip. We're getting close to the end here. About where they say their conclusions. I don't think he has much speaking till the end. So we'll see if we can catch it here. Here it is. Clinton, his bald head. We'll start here.
We're gonna have closing arguments.
60 seconds. Let's keep it brief. It's fine.
What are we arguing about?
Closing argument. Start with you.
Take it wherever you want. You got a minute.
I got a minute. Thanks everybody for putting up with us, and thanks a lot for letting us spend the day with you all. You're actually a lovely crowd, and that's the truth of the matter. And you might not know it from what you just heard a couple of hours that have just passed, but this is actually a terrific group of guys. And only pushed like this will they get on each other's nerves as badly as they apparently did. For those of you who want to see a very professional campaign, it's not everybody, it's not for everybody, but I believe it is the right answer to disrupting the political duopoly that reigns in America. For those of you who want to see a professional campaign, I encourage you to look at one of our 3 websites. We've got an AI bot coming out that's very fun. It's in beta phase. We call it LISA, the Libertarian Intelligence System Application. You can find it at libertarianintelligence.org. Go test it, play with it. It's a lot of fun. Yes, AI has problems and threats and risks to our future, but this is something that we need to be good at because everyone else is going to be using it. We lean into my background.
Okay, bearded sweater vest guy looks familiar. The guy I've been talking about several times, he does look familiar to me as well. I can't pinpoint him if it's the same guy I'm thinking about, but he definitely has had the same look throughout the entire debate. Sure, run old white guy against old white guy. Yeah, that's the big thing about him, Mike. Besides him just kind of being boring in a lot of ways. And most everybody else on the stage. Like our favorite friend here, Lars. He's got a lot of good things to say too, but he's also on the older side. Not as old as Mike, I don't think. And Rectenwald, the lizard, and others on this debate stage. But he still kind of has that similar old guy vibe, right? That's why the best person on that stage really is Chase. And you gotta have somebody that has a difference besides just simply the party itself, and that would be a very big difference to have, because even on the independent side, the strong candidate there, Robert F. Kennedy, is old. So you have an old guy versus old guy versus old guy versus young guy, so to speak. Same, yes, but Darren knows him. Oh, okay. Well, Darren knows everybody. Go Chase. And Chase isn't wearing a gold tie. No, he's wearing like a purpley looking tie. And then you got Toad, who's basically just there to promote his podcast, which is probably the worst podcast on the internet, called Tower Game. I would suggest not watching that. And when I say not watching that, I mean like really don't watch it. Not like, hey, don't tie your shoes and then you end up tying your shoes. Like, it's not worth your investment at all. It is vile. Do not promo him. Exactly. Yes, it's the fact that it even exists is as Des says there, gross. It is very much gross. Let's put it this way. The fact that Dave Smith, I know that he's been on the podcast or that episode a couple times, or that whatever you want to call it, a couple times. But he was even cautious about going onto it a couple of times before. Like I said, he's been on there multiple times, so he's not that uncautious. But just the fact that he's even second guessing making an appearance on it should tell you something. So yeah, says a lot about humanity. Yeah, over the guise of free speech, right? Yeah, it's a blast. All right, I think that's the it for uh, for Mike. We got a couple of clips I wrote down that I can jump to and get some recordings of. I do think I'm probably going to do a video series on this. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think I should do another research live stream on the next candidate, or do you think I should just make videos on this and we'll do something else next time when I do a live stream? It is kind of interesting doing it as a live stream because the research is going to have to get done either way. But if you do like this idea, we'll go ahead and spin the wheel to see who we're going to cover the next time, and we'll go from there. As a marketing person, why in the hell are they using old branding? Probably because they didn't want to pay money on the new stuff. Didn't want to do money on the new stuff is probably. But the fact, what I thought was kind of interesting is obviously these people sponsored their convention, but you have a couple of the candidates, right? You got Jacob Hornberger, the lizard. Well, he's not the lizard, actually. That's Rectenwall. But yeah. Jacob Hornberger, and then Lars, and then I don't know what's behind him here. And then a couple of other ones. But it's kind of funny seeing them as candidates on the stage and then having their names right behind it. But it's actually rather brilliant, especially on Lars' perspective. Whoever's running his campaign, I thought that was Chase's, by the way. Whoever's running Lars's campaign was kind of brilliant on that, especially because he's right next to his name and his head's blocking Chase's logo throughout the whole thing. So, kind of brilliant there. Do streams of current events? Well, that's going to be my podcast. I haven't decided if I'm going to live stream my podcast. I did with my season 1 of my podcast. I live streamed those. I haven't decided if I just want to do those as solo videos and that just go onto my YouTube, or if I want to do those as live streams where you'll be able to watch them on Twitch and YouTube and all those other places, right? We'll see. I would hang for it, right, Amanda? Chase's logo's behind Lars. Yep. Tyler Smith is doing a lot of Lars's team. Well, she's doing a fantastic job, that's for sure. Definitely a good campaign manager or just somebody that's taking charge of the campaign, even if they don't formally have that title. All right. Let's see. Let's spin the wheel to see who we're going to cover next live stream. We're not going to spend time on it tonight because it's already getting rather late for a second one. So we have done Mike. Let's take him off the wheel. I don't really want to cover him either. We're going to just take him off. All right. There we go. So we got Chase Oliver, Jacob Hornberg, Joshua Smith, Lars, and Michael Rechtenwall. Let's spin. Oh, look at that. All right, so Lars is going to be next time we go for a candidate stream. Lars, okay. Which is kind of funny when it turned out that way, but rather convenient for sure. So we will cover him the next time we go for a live stream, which at this point, I'm not sure when that would be. Maybe Wednesday, depending on when I do my podcast, especially if my podcast is going to be live streamed. Because at the moment, I'm thinking of doing my podcast on Tuesday, and then I would do this on Wednesday. Well, maybe not. Tuesday. I think Tuesday would be a good podcast. So if I am going to live stream the podcast on Tuesday, it will be on Tuesday, and I'll let y'all know when. But if not on Wednesdays, it's probably going to be Wednesday nights or Thursday nights, depending on how that goes. So that's kind of my thoughts right now. So from the sounds of it, it looks like y'all would want the podcast to be live streamed, which is definitely something that is very doable. So that would be Tuesday then. Tuesday evening, probably. I'll see. I'll see when I come up with the time, and I'll let y'all know in the Discord. And I'll also publish it on my Twitch schedule for those who are simply watching the Twitch and not in Discord. Okay. Wednesdays I have Vermin meetings. Those sad faces when Vermin is involved. Or I don't want to miss Wyatt. I have no life, so I will be around. Yeah, that tends to happen when your big thing is the Libertarian Party, and you also have kids. So that's double duty for sure. Yeah. Even when I just had my little job, it kept me pretty busy. And it's kind of funny how that worked because it wasn't even like I was doing that much, but it still kept me pretty busy. So the fact that you're in staff now is definitely going to be a lot more work for sure. So I can definitely see that. All right. So I'll let y'all know probably tomorrow what time I plan on doing it on Tuesday, or if I'm going to do the other stream, this one where we're talking about Lars on Wednesday or Thursday. So I'll see y'all guys then, and adios.